If you take a winding drive through northern Summit County, Ohio, and find yourself near Boston Township, you might notice something strange. Abandoned houses with boarded up windows, government warning signs bolted to old trees, and once public roads suddenly ending in barricades. This is Helltown, or at least that's what it's come to be called. An eerie, overgrown place that locals whisper about and outsiders dare each other to explore. Officially, it's part of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I said that so wrong, for sure. But unofficially, it's one of the most infamous ghost towns in America. The kind of place where urban legend, government suspicion, and local folklore overlap. This isn't your typical forgotten mining town or a village that just faded out with time. Helltown is different. It didn't die, it was taken, abruptly, by the federal government, and no one seems to agree why. Some say it was to preserve the land, others claim it was to hide something. And depending on who you ask, what they were hiding might have been toxic waste, mutant creatures, satanic cults, or all of the above. Today, we're pulling the curtain back on Helltown because, while the stories are sensational, the truth underneath is just as unsettling, maybe even more so. In the early 1970s, the town of Boston, Ohio was quiet. Tucked into the Cuyahoga Valley, it was a patchwork of small homes, farms, and local businesses. The kind of place where you knew your neighbors and probably had a family connection to at least one of them. Then in 1974, something strange happened. The federal government showed up and started buying everything. Under the National Park Service's eminent domain authority, nearly the entire town was purchased, house by house. This wasn't a slow development. Families were given notice, then watched as their neighbors packed up and left. Some were paid fair value on their land. Others felt forced out. And for many, there was no clear answer why it was happening so fast. The official reason was that the government wanted to preserve the natural beauty of the valley, transforming it into what would become the Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area. But the speed and method of the buyouts left residents rattled. Homes were abandoned before demolition could begin. Some were simply boarded up and left. And in that vacuum, rumors started. Why were the buildings still standing? Why had some properties been fenced off, others marked with strange warnings? And why had a quiet rural town suddenly become a federal no-go zone? Almost as soon as the signs went up, the stories followed. People who'd driven through the area claimed to see vehicles with government plates parked at odd angles, headlights still running. Others swore they heard voices in the woods at night, not animal calls or hikers, but strange mechanical sounds, like generators or machines. Theories cropped up fast. One of the most enduring was this: that the government hadn't cleared Boston Township to make room for a park, but to contain a disaster. Some said there had been a chemical spill, or the discovery of toxic waste buried by companies like Monsanto or DuPont in the 1960s. The theory goes that once these toxic materials were discovered, the federal government had no choice but to seize the land and scrub it clean, or hide it. While there is no official documentation of a major spill in Helltown itself, Summit and Cuyahoga counties were no strangers to industrial waste incidents. In fact, The infamous Cuyahoga River fire of 1969, caused by pollution, was one of the very events that led to the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. So the idea that something hazardous could have been buried nearby wasn't entirely far-fetched. Even more curious, some EPA documents from the late 70s list unexplained environmental red zones in the area, with testing planned but never published. That silence left room for suspicion to grow, and when the government won't talk, rumors don't just spread, they mutate. By the early 1980s, Helltown had become a breeding ground for local legends, with the area largely closed to the public and patrolled by park rangers. Teens and thrill seekers began sneaking in, documenting what they found. The abandoned homes, many with furniture still inside, felt frozen in time. Some had messages scrawled across the walls. Others had doors chained shut from the outside. It didn't take much for imaginations to run wild. Stories of mutant creatures began to take hold. Exaggerated accounts of pale, eyeless animals lurking in the woods, or serpents with chemical burns slithering along the riverbanks. One particularly strange tale centered around a supposed government experiment gone wrong, a theory that an illegal bioweapons program had been tested in secret with mutated results that now roamed the forest. While these ideas seem far-fetched, they gained traction in part because no one was allowed to disprove them. Helltown was off limits, roads were blocked, federal rangers actively turned people away, and when you leave a place in silence and shadow, it becomes a canvas for fear. Then came the Satanic Panic. In the 1980s and early 90s, America was gripped by a wave of fear over alleged cult activity, child abductions, and satanic ritual abuse. Churches warned parents, schools taught signs to look for, and media coverage only amplified the hysteria. And in that cultural monument, Helltown was the perfect backdrop for every nightmare scenario. But in Ohio, it wasn't just talk. Police departments across the state filed reports of ritual graffiti, makeshift altars in the woods, and alleged sightings of robed figures in cemeteries. In 1985, the Summit County Sheriff's Office reportedly received multiple calls about mutilated animals left on back porches in wooded trails near Boston Township. Officers often found nothing or found just enough to keep the rumors alive. One deputy, quoted anonymously in a Beacon Journal retrospective, said, "It was always the same. Someone calls in screams or firelight in the woods, we get out there, and there's just enough to feel like we missed something." Helltown's remote layout didn't help. With its winding roads, boarded up homes, and visible church ruins, it already looked like a horror movie set. The story of the church with upside-down crosses became a recurring thread, often cited as, quote, proof of cult takeover. In reality, the crosses were decorative Gothic elements, common in some older Protestant architecture. But viewed through the lens of panic, they became ominous. Another persistent rumor told of animal bones arranged in ritual circles, found by teens sneaking through the woods. Whether those were left by pranksters, hunters, or something stranger is still unknown. Researchers looking back now point out that most of these claims were likely exaggerated or fabricated, but during the height of the panic, no one was fact-checking, and when teams came back from the woods with wide eyes and terrifying stories, the legend only grew. Helltown wasn't just an abandoned place, it became a stage for America's deepest fears, and we handed it a script soaked in fire and blood. And honestly, too, like it's a little bit harder to fact check back then because it's not like they had the internet like we do now. I think there was internet, but it wasn't like super like accessible. However you want to put that. I could be wrong. I was a 90s baby and I don't remember having internet until I was like early 2000s. Perhaps the most iconic symbol of Helltown's mystery is the abandoned school bus. Sitting crooked and rusted on a wooded trail, the bus became the centerpiece of dozens of stories. Some said it was used by a cult to transport victims. Others claimed the ghosts of children could be seen sitting inside late at night, waiting to be saved. The truth is less dramatic, but just as eerie. The bus is believed to have been used by a family living in the area temporarily while fixing up a nearby cabin. They left it behind when they moved on, and the local lore filled in the rest. Over the years, vandals stripped the interior and spray painted crude messages, only adding to the haunted image. Rangers eventually removed the bus entirely in the 2010s, but by then, its legend was baked into Helltown history. Then there's the church with the burning steeple, often described as always smoldering, always on fire but never burning down. This too likely stems from misunderstanding and embellishment. Several small chapels in the region had visible weather damage, scorch marks from lightning, and collapsed roofing that gave them a jagged, broken silhouette. From a distance in the night light, they might have looked like something was glowing or burning. The legend took care of the rest. Of all the places in Helltown lore, none has the same bone-deep unease as Stanford Road, often called the end of the world. According to legend, it's a road that climbs steeply, then ends suddenly at a cliff. Drivers who go too fast are said to vanish over the edge. Others claim that strange figures appear on the roadside watching, never approaching but never blinking. Stanford Road is real, and the incline is real too. It rises sharply into the woods before abruptly stopping at a barricade where the old path once connected to other routes before park development cut them off. For thrill seekers, it's a rite of passage. For urban explorers, it's holy ground. Some believe the road was intentionally severed to block access to a hidden facility. Others think it was once a government access road, useful during the buyout, then erased. In truth, record from the Ohio Department of Transportation show the closure was due to erosion and poor grading, which made it unsafe for public use. But that hasn't stopped stories from taking root. Visitors have described a weird drop in temperature, a dead zone in GPS signal, and moments where their car headlights seem to bend unnaturally, casting shadows where there should be none. One blogger, who spent the night near the barricade, wrote, "It's not that something jumps out at you, it's that nothing does. The silence is so clean, like the woods are holding their breath." Rangers have their own stories. Some report finding scratch marks on the inside of the barricade signs, or cars turned around in panic, abandoned with headlights still on, whether caused by pranksters, wildlife, or overactive imaginations. These moments add fuel to the myth. Geologists point out that parts of the area sit on a mix of shale and unstable sandstone, which can amplify small tremors and produce strange acoustics. That could explain why some people claim to hear whispers in the trees or footsteps behind them that don't belong. But as always in Helltown, the science only half explains the feeling. The rest lives in the dark around the next curve, where the road just stops. With so many stories, it's hard to know where Helltown's truth ends and its legend begins. The abandoned houses were real. The government buyout happened. The signs, barricades, and security presence were all documented. But the cults, the mutants, the cursed roads, those live in the space between memory and imagination. What makes Helltown different is that it was left in a perfect storm of silence and suspicion. Most towns that disappeared do so slowly and quietly, but Boston Township was stripped almost overnight, and the land was left in limbo. No new development, no full demolition, just a husk of a town surrounded by fences and half-truths. And when that happens, people fill in the blanks. Folklorist Dr. Emily Heller, who studied Appalachian and Midwestern ghost towns, once said, quote, "Places like Helltown are living myths, not because they're fake, but because they evolve in real time. Each person who walks those woods adds a new layer to the story." Urban explorers share similar views. One blog from the early 2000s detailed a trip through one of the abandoned trailheads, noting that the scariest part wasn't the buildings, it was the silence. The way sound seemed to vanish after a certain point, like the land didn't want to carry it anymore. That kind of experiential horror is hard to capture in headlines. It's not about jump scares, it's about atmosphere, and Helltown has that in spades. Even if you know the facts, standing at the edge of Stanford Road at night with your car engine off and the trees swallowing every sound, it doesn't feel like a place explained. It feels like a place erased. So why does Helltown still hold our attention decades later? Because we need places like this, forgotten corners that let us wonder. In a world of satellite maps and street views, there's something powerful about a town that resists being explained. Helltown is a reminder that not everything has a clean ending, that sometimes a community disappears not because of ghosts or monsters, but because someone in an office signed a piece of paper. That real grief and displacement can be twisted into stories of fire, blood, and shadows, not to mock it, but to process it. It's a ghost town where the ghosts aren't always dead. They're the people who had to leave, the homes they couldn't sell, the memories they couldn't take with them. And maybe that's what's really haunted about Helltown. Not what was hidden, but what was lost. And to be honest, I've seen some pictures that some, fellow photographers have gone out and taken. I want to check it out and bring my cameras and take some photos. But also, like, ghost towns kind of creep me the hell out. And I feel like this is one that would totally creep me out. But definitely something I do want to do in the future. That would be the Cracked Relic episode on Helltown. Sources will be down in the description and coming up after this. And I hope you don't get a little too spooked out. Thank you for watching.